Benjamin Netanyahu has been returned as Prime Minister of Israel after his Likud party formed a coalition with ultra-Orthodox and ultra-nationalist allies following a period of turmoil for the country that has seen 5 elections in 4 years. And you thought the UK had it bad. Well, this will be Netanyahu's 6th term in office, following his previous defeat at the ballot box back in June. But there's domestic and international concern about this result, not least that it will inflame, potentially, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Well, let's speak to Jotam Confino, foreign editor at Jewish News. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I suppose ever since the election result came, this inevitability really has been inevitable.
Completely. We've known for a while now that Netanyahu was re-elected once again. He rose from the dead, so to say. He's the master of comebacks. So it's not there's nothing new about Netanyahu coming back. What's new is that what we're hearing about what the government intends to do. In the past 6 weeks or so, we've slowly learned which laws that the new government intends to pass. And those laws have really caused a lot of backlash inside Israel, but also internationally. In Israel, there's a lot of concerns about the minorities, especially the LGBTQ community. One of the laws that the government intends to amend is the current discrimination law. Like most countries, like most liberal democracies, Israel has a law against discrimination. The government wants to change this law so that doctors and businesses can turn away patients and clients if it contradicts their religious beliefs. In other words, if an ultra-Orthodox doctor does not believe or agree with homosexual values, then he can simply turn that person away. Whether that's going to actually happen or not in practice, that's a whole different issue. But this is just an example of what the government intends to do with regards to changing laws that could really target minorities, such as the LGBTQ community.
This is a really interesting point because for many years, Israel has been able to sort of shine a light as this liberal democracy beacon in the Middle East, a place where you can go that is most free in the Middle East. They have, and particularly pointing to LGBT freedoms, have been a big part of that PR push. Tel Aviv Pride is one of the most respected around the world. Might Israel suffer in terms of its international liberal reputation when it comes to implementing more orthodox laws?
For sure. There's already such a backlash, like I said, internally, but also internationally. The media are really focusing on these changes, and they are comparing Israel now to some of the other countries that they exist among in the Middle East. And it's quite interesting and fascinating that a person like Benjamin Netanyahu, who is a liberal at his core, at least that's what he would like to project himself as, he believes in John Locke and Montesquieu and all of these liberal values. He's the one who's now allowing for the most far-right extremist politicians to enter government and to change the nature of Israel, to simply turn back the clock. Israel has made a lot of progress in the past 20 years when it comes to LGBTQ rights, but also rights for women. And the new ministers in his government simply will not allow this because of their very orthodox view on life and their belief that the Torah, the Jewish Bible, is more important than Israel's basic laws. Israel doesn't have a constitution, but Israel's basic laws. So a lot of backlash here, and I don't recall a government that has been so widely criticized, even before it was sworn in, by all layers of society. I'm talking about former Supreme Court judges, former IDF, Israeli military generals, and defense ministers, the high-tech industry. There's so many layers of Israeli society that have warned Netanyahu that Israel's democracy is at danger. And it's not only because of the LGBTQ community that could see itself being not persecuted, but at least discriminated against. It's also because of the intentions by this government to curb the Supreme Court's power. The new government would like to simply pass a law that says that that Parliament can pass any law with a simple majority without the Supreme Court being able to strike it down if it goes against basic human rights. And that's a huge issue in a country where the Supreme Court is supposed to be the monitor of politicians.
It's interesting to see Benjamin Netanyahu, of course, the longest-serving Prime Minister of Israel, sort of appearing again in a new form, but perhaps more beholden to his coalition partners than he would like to be. If indeed he, at his core, is a sort of Western-facing liberal, and now sort of has to bend to potentially a more theocratic cabinet, I suppose the question comes, what price power? Is Benjamin Netanyahu really in charge if his coalition partners seem to have such sway over the policy agenda?
It's a very good question. Netanyahu himself would like to say that he's the guy behind the steering wheel. I doubt that that's the case. I think most people in Israel doubt that that's the case. Netanyahu is under huge pressure from these far-right lawmakers that really know that Netanyahu has no other friends. Like you said, he's a liberal man at his core, at least he used to be. But Netanyahu is also on trial in 3 different corruption cases. And he has burned virtually every bridge with other right-wing lawmakers in parliament that were once his friends that he sat in government with. He has burned so many bridges with all of them, partly because of his corruption trial, that what he's got left are the most loyal, but also the most extreme lawmakers. Granted, it's a majority, but it's still not Netanyahu's favorite allies. That would be simply wrong to say. Netanyahu is too smart to know that this government will do him well internationally. Netanyahu will be the one who has to meet Joe Biden, who has to meet probably Putin eventually, but also Sunak, and he's going to be the one explaining what exactly is going on in Israel, and he's the leader of the government. So it is not a dream for him at all. It is not the government that he wanted to have, but he has no other options. And obviously he's gathering these far-right lawmakers in his government because they are inclined or willing to make sure that Netanyahu's trial will be cancelled one way or another. They're looking at different kinds of laws that could prevent his trial from continuing. One of them would be simply to pass a law that would make it impossible to indict a sitting prime minister. There's another law that would nix some of the indictments against him. So there's always an explanation for things like this. Wow. You don't go from one extreme to the other overnight. This is because of Netanyahu's trial, and that's why he's in this government.